This is the heartbeat of human services, a peek into the inspiring stories of our community and all things DHS. Join us.
Hi, everybody. I'm your host, Jana Slagle, for the podcast, The Heartbeat of Human Services. And today our guest is Tim Stevens, who is a program director of our Jamison Children's Center. So welcome, Tim.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Great to have you. And so just a little bit about you, Tim. How long have you been here?
Going on 18 years.
18 years. Okay. And how long have you been the director over at the Jamison Children's Center?
A little over 1 year.
A little over 1 year. So I know that before that you were there in a different role, so you're very familiar with our Jamison Center, aren't you?
Yeah.
And we've been working on a little bit of a timeline or history of the center and found that it was actually built in 1981. Is that correct?
It sounds about right. I
Okay.
have seen pictures that say 1979, and it's just an empty field at that time.
Okay, so I think that's when they obtained the land, and then it was actually built in 1981. But it was interesting reading that the history. It was a little bit of a process to get there, and originally oversight of children who needed protection was with probation, and then it switched to the Department of Human Services. So it's been with us for at least 20, 25 years, right, I would say. And it was interesting to read how it was changed from Shalimar to a Miriam Jamison Center because she was quite an advocate for children. Sounds like she was quite an amazing person. So I'm glad that we named it after her. So tell us, what is the Jamison Center and what is the shelter? What's the purpose?
The Jamison Children's Center is what I call the tip of the spear of children coming into foster care. It's a emergency shelter. It's licensed under the California Department of Social Services Community Care Licensing. And we use acronyms for everything, and that's CDS, SCCL. And in 2018, we changed from being a group home to a temporary shelter care facility. And that was a slight change as the state legislation was moving away from group homes and going to what we call STRTPs, of short-term residential treatment programs. And the shelter is an emergency shelter, a temporary shelter care facility. And that is children coming into protective custody due to no fault of their own. So this would be pursuant to an investigation by the police, another law enforcement entity, or investigating social worker. And the course of that investigation deemed that those children can't stay in their home environment safely and they need to come out. And that could be for any various reasons. But once that determination is made that they can't come out, social workers, our law enforcement, people in our community are wonderful, and they look for family first. And if they can't identify family immediately, and kids have to come out of the home, they can't go to grandma. They come to Jamison. The Jamison Center is like, without plugging a store, but it's like Walmart because it's a one-stop shop.
Yeah.
Jamison comes in, we're going to receive them. So we're a receiving center. We're going to intake them. We're an intake and assessment center. We're going to house them. We're going to feed them. We have a cafeteria on site. We have a contract with Kern Medical. We have nursing and a clinic on site, and nurses that come, a couple of days a week.
And you have a school too.
We have the school on site that's run by KCSOS, another acronym, Kern County Superintendent of Schools, as well as our community partners with mental health are on site during the day. So a child comes into protective custody, and we're open 24/7, but let's say a child comes in between 8 and 5, everybody's there. The nurses are there. The medical staff are there. If they're not there on site, we can ask somebody to come, or we send them to the hospital to get checked out. Mental health is there. We have our group counseling staff that are there, which provide direct care. They're direct caregivers for the kids. And so when I say it's a one-stop shop, it really is. So, Jana, and you got to think about the trauma that kids have gone through. And we in Kern County overall are shifting. And for the last few years, our hospitals, our schools, our law enforcement, not just our social service agencies, but all these other community partners and entities are shifting their lens and shifting their view from a question of when somebody's acting out aggressively or somebody's having a bad day of what's wrong with you,
Right.
to what's happened to you.
Yes.
And then just that
Trauma-informed
small
care, you're
shift.
right.
And our community is doing wonderful work with changing to that trauma-informed lens. So kids are coming into care. You got to think about the trauma that happened in the home that resulted in someone going out and doing an investigation.
Right.
Then the trauma of putting them in a car and saying, I'm taking you away from your home, and then bringing them to the Jamison Center, which, as warm and welcoming as we want it to be, it's still a building, it's still an institution, and it's still not home, and it's not grandma's house, and I don't know anybody there. And so when we bring kids in there, we really want to engage with them empathetically and wrap them up and do the best assessment we can for them and get them whatever services they may need. Teams come into place when kids come into Jamison. We have placement workers who are stationed there at Jamison who will look for an appropriate placement for a child based on their needs. Like I said, mental health is there doing an assessment. Our group counselors are there assessing. And in those first few days, in those first few hours, and then when they are, hopefully they can go to family, but if they don't go to family and they go to a stranger, to a caregiver, we're going to pass on the information we know about them. We're going to pass on that, hey, you know what? At nighttime, this is their nighttime ritual. We had a young boy who needed a nightlight. Okay, that's okay. Lots of kids need nightlights.
Right.
Lots of adults need nightlights.
Yeah.
So, but we're going to pass that information on. But the way we found out about the nightlight, though, was he was having a couple bad nights, and he didn't mention to anybody about a nightlight. Now, granted, nobody asked him, but we called his grandma and said, hey, you know what? We knew that grandma was applying and trying to get placement and working through those processes. We asked, has he ever spent the night with you? Yes. He's had a few bad nights with us, and we think it's because he's new, and grandma said, well, you know, he's afraid of the dark.
There you go.
No, we didn't know that, but now we do.
That was helpful.
And so we ask a few more questions. Do you have a ritual? Do you know? And so by learning that, say, okay, well, when other kids come in, let's ask. Let's start asking. Let's start interviewing.
Finding out.
And this is something that has evolved over time. Jamison has been there a long time, and we have wonderful staff who watch, who observe, who ask questions, who will, and then we'll pass that information on. Then the therapist knows. And then, you know, the social worker knows. Everybody is
on the same page.
The reports all go to everybody on that team. And so as we're, treating these kids with that trauma-informed, with that team approach, bringing the family into it, and trying to really do a good assessment in terms of the needs of the child so we can address those needs while they're with us at Jamison, and then link the resources that are inherent within the community.
That's good.
So that when the child goes to either to a caregiver or hopefully home with family, hopefully ultimately home with parents, that, whatever community resources are there or tied in, that they're there to meet those identified needs of the child.
That's great. So Tim, let's just kind of break it down a little for anybody who's listening. So a child may come into our care, protective custody, by either, like you said, law enforcement or a social worker, because they need protection. So something's going on in their home and they're not safe, right? So they come to the center, and as you were saying, they get assessed. So they make sure there's no bruises and that kind of thing, and find out what's going on physically. And then, like you said, there's somebody who addressing mental needs and looking at that. And then you have a kitchen of wonderful staff cooking food for them. So if they come in the certain time of the day and they're upset, you guys make sure they get something to eat, which kind of calms us down, doesn't it? When we're upset, get something to eat. And then I just love that, you have how many bedrooms you were telling me do you have there?
24.
24. Okay. So you have all the rooms, there's restrooms. And the facility also has beautiful grassy backyard area for the kids to play. There's a lovely garden that is run, and the kids can go out there. So there's a lot of care in the center to make sure that every need is met. Kind of like what you're saying. Yeah,
absolutely.
I love that.
There's another scenario in which a child could come to Jamison, and that would be a child who is already in protective custody already in a caregiver's home, or maybe even mom and dad's home, in terms of what we call family maintenance. Their case is still open, but they've gone back. And then if anything happens there that, presents a danger, or sometimes a caregiver can no longer provide care for that child. And then other times the child's behaviors. Remember, we're looking at kids who suffered trauma, but we're also
Right.
looking at kids who grow up and become, teenagers, or maybe came from a family background with violent histories or things. And as they got older, they attached to that. And there are times where the caregivers say, I can no longer do it. And for whatever that reason is, we try and find a good match again.
So but the purpose is it's a temporary shelter until we can find a more permanent placement or situation like that, right?
Yeah,
So,
long term. Yeah.
yeah. When you're talking, I can see that you have a great deal of understanding and compassion for the kids. I could see that in everything that you do. And when you speak about them, what would you say as people decide to work with you there at the center, which you have social workers and then you have group counselors, and that's just a term. What kind of a person would you say is the kind of characteristics to work in that setting, would you say?
It's a difficult setting to work in. Kids are great, and kids are resilient. And so they come in, and we want to be sensitive. We want to use that trauma-informed lens, but then you can also have fun.
Yeah.
It's not, they don't have to be coddled.
Right.
We have rules, but but kids respond to rules and structure. The school is on site. They go to school. They come back. They have recess. We have an activities coordinator who plans a calendar. There's an event every day, and there's a lot to do there. So for somebody who was going to come work at Jamison and come work there, somebody who has empathy and compassion, but also somebody who has energy. Because you got to have some energy to work with kids all day long, every day, day after day.
Yeah.
These are truly gifted individuals.
Yeah.
It's not something that can be necessarily taught. There's something inherent about somebody who works with children.
And the kids that stay overnight are at least 6 years old. Is that right? They start at 6?
Yeah.
Okay.
A child, it's, under 6. So 5 and under. But anyone under 6, we try and place out of Jamison within 6 hours.
Okay.
And again, Jamison's one of 8 shelters in California. And when I talk with the other shelter directors, I'm often reminded and made aware of how lucky we are in Kern County for the people we have here. We have emergency foster homes, which we call an EFH. And these emergency foster homes are people who have committed to taking a phone call in the middle of the night. People who said, I will take these children, ages 5 and below. We have somebody who will often go through that list towards the weekends and say, hey, can you be the first one we call on Friday night, on Saturday morning, and build that list up. And then hopefully nothing happens over that time period. But if it does, we have people we can call, and then that works towards the expediency of a child, being placed out of Jamison. Oftentimes, in cases of newborns or children in the hospital or something, the kids never come to Jamison.
Right.
They go straight to those emergency foster homes.
So you work closely with the foster parents too, don't you?
We do, and that's our placement unit that really works and develops relationships with our with our foster parents, with the caregivers who are out there, and with that working relationship, they get a knowledge of who's a good fit for this child, and who's a good fit for that child.
Right. I imagine it's challenging when you do occasionally have children with special needs of any kind. It could be autism or, blindness, deafness, or any other behavioral concern. That must be challenging to know the foster parents who might help you with that.
Nobody can see my smile right now because we have a older child at the center right now with autism and special needs. And when they came to us, we had lots of concerns. I don't want to give too much information for confidentiality, but a lot of concerns. And my staff just worked with this kid and
Oh,
has done wonderful work and has made such progress.
wow.
And so some of those worries were medical concerns.
Mm-hmm.
And we thought, wow, we might have to put this child into the hospital. And,
Mm.
and staff were working and were concerned, and we're, doing things like having the nurse check them out, a couple times a week, and checking their weight and,
Mm-hmm.
and things like that, and make sure they're doing okay. And
Mm-hmm.
again, calling family and getting tips and tricks and hints and stuff.
Yeah.
And so over time, developing and learning, and this child is doing very well
Oh, that
right
must be so
now. And so
gratifying.
I was
That's
actually talking
great.
with staff this morning about how much progress this
I'm
child's
so
made due to
glad.
the teamwork and the empathy and the outright caring of the staff
That's
that were
awesome.
there. Plus, when we talk about something like that, which is success with us, but we're talking about success for this child. And we're
Mm-hmm.
talking about when we find a caregiver who can take this child
Right.
with these special needs.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have this collective information
Mm.
about here's what this child likes, here's what they dislike. This is a trigger at nighttime. This
Mm.
is, what they like to eat. This,
Just knowing the
and
child
and being able to pass that on to the potential caregiver, to the next caregiver,
mm-hmm.
is going to work towards stability and meets the best interest of that kid. And
Mm.
that, again, it's a team effort, it's a community effort. But
That's great.
I'm very excited, for the future for this child. When originally we
Mm.
were looking at saying, wow, this is going to be
This is
tough.
tough.
And
Yeah. You had some good people working with you. And so I would say for anyone out there who's listening and would consider this kind of work, you do need to be someone with compassion and patience and just a love for children. And like you said, understanding kind of the trauma lens of looking at the behavior and, instead of why, but what happened and why, how did it get to this place? But I think it's a great place to want to help. And you have a lot of community people that do help the center, especially at Christmas. But I know there's an organization that helps with the lawn care regularly, right? Tell
yeah,
us about that just a little bit.
that's the local Kiwanis Club, and I can't thank them enough. They come out, and we have a couple different areas at Jamison that are aptly named. The big park because it's big, the small park because it's small,
Very creative.
and then we have a smaller one that's called Turtle Park because it has this big cement turtle in it.
Oh, cute.
So, but the Kiwanis take care of the big park, and at the big park, it is,
It's a huge park.
it's quite large,
Mhm.
and they take care of, cutting the lawn
Mowing it
and doing that. There's also a big brick barbecue there that they had donated and maintained and took care of that. And it's just wonderful. Also, the Rotary Club takes good care of Jameson, and not just during the holidays. They call often and or email, and then they do annual events for us. There's other clubs and entities and religious groups, and just we have a wonderful
We
community.
do. We really do. And I know we were just talking about the grant that we received from the Lowe's hometown group. And so we got a new tarp over the basketball court, right? And a new shed to store many of the donations you receive. So that is wonderful, the community. So I know we are sharing information too. If people do want to donate or get involved in any way, would they just call the center? Would you suggest that? Or would they go online and look for helpful things they can do?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah, you can go online and just
On our website,
yeah.
kcdhs.org, and you can search Jamison Center, and we have a wish list there. And so at Christmas time, you do get a lot of things that kind of keep you through the year, don't they?
They do. And that's the benefit of the shed is going to be is that we can keep things through the year. So anyone who comes into Jamison, when they leave, they get a toy, a stuffed animal or something. And then periodically throughout the year and at the holidays, when we get inundated with donations, those donations are inventoried, sorted, go through. They'll last throughout the year as kids come in, but also we'll reach out to the social workers throughout and say, hey, if you have kids on your caseload, we have these toys, these games, these gifts
That's great.
And then they'll facilitate that to kids in need on their caseload.
That's good.
And so that keeps it going. We really do. We really do depend on the community, and the community always comes through. And it's not always toys. It is clothing,
hygiene
diapers,
yes,
diapers, wipes, formula,
undergarments. We need those often.
Yeah. We don't recycle those.
No, they get new ones.
You get a brand new pair, and we'll put your name on it, and it goes into your laundry bag. That's yours to keep.
And then sometimes kids have to go to court, so you need nicer things for that, right?
Exactly. Yeah, we have a couple of closets we call the court closet, and so that they can put on some nice clothing and go to court. Also, and not just for court. Last year during the holidays, we had a couple of teenagers who were doing some school event.
Oh, okay.
And want to go and dress up for those events at school. We had a young lady who was singing in a choir, so we made sure that she had a nice dress to go in and everything, and she sang quite beautifully.
Wow.
She really did.
There's a lot of talented kids. A lot. Well, Tim, I hope that when people listen to this, they get a better picture about the purpose of the center and just the compassion and kindness that all of you and your staff provide, and that the community continues to support the center. We do need their partnership, don't we? So is there any last words that you'd like to leave with any viewers or listeners, I mean?
Yeah, I think in honesty and transparency, I think we recognize that the center has its challenges as well. We've talked about the successes.
Yeah.
But then, foster care in of itself comes with challenges. And so for people who want to come work, come in with your eyes open and come in with that passion, come in with that desire, come in with that drive to help out. We're going to focus on success. We're going to work on the best interests of child, and we're going to work on being better every day. But, just given the trauma and the things that come in,
it's challenging.
It can be challenging.
Yeah.
It can be very, very rewarding. But, you need to look at both sides.
That's good. So if you have any questions or you want to know more about the Jamison Center, go to kcdhs.org. If people want to apply for any kind of position, they would go to the county website. If there are organizations out there that are listening and they think, oh, I want to come in and read to the kids, is there a process for that?
Now, if somebody wants to come in and read to the kids, yes, I have a process in place. We want to have as much normalcy for a child at Jamison as possible. And so it's normal to go out and go ice skating. It's normal to go out and go to the movies. It's normal to go out and go to the football game. And so we have as many events and activities as we can fit in that calendar. And we've got a wonderful activities coordinator who is always asking about, well, can we do this? And we want to do those things. We want to give children a normal experience while they're there.
That's great. And I know when you do those things, you have several staff with them. So there's a lot of watchfulness going on.
There's a lot of oversight,
That's great.
and supervision. And for the volunteers, they would not be left alone with the child. They'd still have staff
That's
with
good.
them.
You got to protect them. Well, Tim, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope that this provides some insight to people who may not know exactly what the center is, and we'll continue to talk about it on our website and share information. So thank you for being our guest today.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Welcome to today's Mindful Minute. If you're like me, you are stressed out now that the holiday season is upon us. Here are some unconventional ways you and I both can start implementing to keep you grounded during this hectic time. The first one being laugh more. Did you know kids reportedly laugh 400 times a day? But the average adult only gets about 15 in a day. 2. Go to a cultural event. Experience something. Anything out of your norm. 3. Read an old journal that you wrote. As well as funny throwbacks, you'll probably discover past issues and recall how you overcame them. This list is short, but there are a million more things you can try. Create your own personalized list that you can go to check off when you start feeling a little stressed. Thanks for listening. This has been your Mindful Minute.
Thank you for joining us for the Heartbeat of Human Services podcast today. We hope you'll join us next time.